What is happening, gentlemen? I hope you guys are doing spectacular. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. And I hope that the sun is shining wherever you are. And if it's not, well, you know what? Hopefully it comes out soon because summer's right around the corner. And, I just hope that I can make this day a little bit better by bringing to you a wonderful interview that I had with none other than Dai Manuel, who is also from Vancouver. And, we got into it talking about all the things that guys need to, be healthy, which is something that's missing out. And one of these things that a lot of people aren't really taking into consideration, right? When it comes to health, people don't take into consideration the fact that, you got to be mentally straight. You got to be financially straight. You got to be in good straits, not dire straits. But you got to be in good condition in all these regards, not just fitness, right? And Dai is a lifestyle coach who helps people, conquer all these different aspects of life. Whether you need to get your money right, whether you got to get your mind right, he comes in and helps you really rewire your brain and make it better. And I've also added all his links in the description below. But one of the things that I do want you guys to check out after this episode is his TED Talk. His TED Talk on the importance of masculinity and how I think it is evolving. And the changes that need to be made and the direction that it should go in. And, I found it to be a wonderful, wonderful TED Talk that I'm like, hey, you know what? Sometimes you watch some and you're like, meh. And you watch other ones and you're like, yo, this was gold, right? So I really want you guys to check that out as soon as you're done, checking out this interview. Or if, you're like, hey, I want to see what this guy's about. Check him out before, you get into this interview. This interview is about 59 minutes long. The TED Talk's about 11. And, it was a spectacular TED Talk. So definitely check him out there. Check him out on all his different socials. I've attached them all in the description below. But without any further ado, let's jump into how guys can really take advantage of this life by living an optimal life and getting their health in check. And one of the things we did talk about is vitality, guys. And vitality is one of those things that you want to have until you're 95, until your last breath, man. So again, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you guys will too. All right, without any further ado, let's jump on in to today's interview with none other than Dai Manuel. Penis enhancement may seem like a difficult endeavor. However, Me Coach makes it simple. We all know the best way to reach your goals as fast as possible is with a coach. Me Coach offers you just that by giving you an individualized, tailor-made plan specific to your needs. Me Coach has helped thousands of clients improve erectile quality, increase penis length, penis girth, and has helped men improve their sexual stamina to last a whole lot longer. Me Coach is about actually helping you every step of the way in your penis enlargement journey. Unlike many of the crazy gimmicks you may see online, what sets Me Coach apart is the approach. First off, you will get your program created for you by AJ Big Al Alfaro and his team of trusted professionals who have been helping men in the PE realm for decades. They put their expertise into making your program. By using Me Coach, you will have AJ every step of the way to make sure you're exercising safely and effectively to reach your goals. Me Coach focuses on seeing you get to where you want to go in the safest, most efficient way possible. Me Coach also helps men suffering from abnormal curvatures in their penises by using specialized techniques to straighten things out. If you are ready to take your penis enhancement to the next level, you can totally try it out now, risk-free. Now, if you get started, it will start off with a new client interview, customized routine to achieve your goals, Me Coach progress log, access to over 30 exercises, 10 routines, safety guides, one-on-one personal penis training, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. So be sure to check out Me Coach by clicking the link in the description below. 2. Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions Podcast. Today I am joined by Dai Manuel. Dai, how are you doing today, sir?
Conrad, fantastic, man. And now that I've connected with you, even better. So there we go. And I mean, it's cool. Like I laugh because I am used to, as you are, having conversations with people all over the world. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're less than a 20-minute drive from each other right now.
Which is weird. Yeah, it's like I can literally go down to Yaletown. I mean, if traffic's not too bad, because I do not touch the Lionsgate Bridge, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, between certain hours, I don't touch it either.
No.
I'd even rather drive like my daughter goes to Capilano.
No way. Yeah.
Even going to visit her over there, at her place, I sometimes just go to the Ironworkers. I'm not even going to Lionsgate. And for those that aren't around Vancouver, trust me, you go there once and you'll appreciate that our traffic, our city's not set up very well for extra traffic, so and we keep throwing more of the green lanes, right? More bike lanes and more, and I love it. We're a very green city, but I'm like, well, what about all these cars, man? Where are they gonna go? So well, is what it is.
All the people that start moving it, I mean, it's just one of those things we just gotta learn to adapt with. And that's kind of the one thing we were talking about is learning how to adapt. And I did want to kind of start off with your story. And I was reading about at one point you were obese, man. Is that true?
Big kid, man.
Dive into that, man. Dive into that. Because I think there's a lot of guys that resonate with that, could definitely learn from your story.
Well, thanks. Conrad, I know we all have origin stories, right? I'm a huge comic book fan. As those that can see the video, I've got my boys on the wall there. And, I love the story. Right. I love the story of people doing amazing things and also the underdog coming and becoming triumphant. Right. But also, we all have an origin story. We all have a point where things could have gone left or right. And for some reason, we opted to go the direction we did.
Yes.
And ever since that moment, things unfold in a certain way, and that's the beautiful thing about life. Yeah, we can always play the what if game. Well, what if I did something different? Yeah, you can play around with whatever that is, but you decided to do this. And you got to commit to the choices that we make, when I became really aware that I wanted to coach and mentor people for the rest of my life, like when I really was like, I want to help people with big transformations. It wasn't something that I came to naturally. A lot of people meet me and they automatically think, oh, I'm someone that's been into fitness all my life. I'm probably, I have people, I remember clients would say, well, yeah, I mean, you don't understand what I'm going through. Like, I mean, look at you, you've probably always been this way. And I'm like, no, excuse me. I'm like, no, you don't get it, and that's, but we get so far removed from our own story. Sometimes we forget, right, where we've come from,
definitely.
And so for me, from the age of 9 to 14, I just kept putting weight on and putting it on. And, I could go back and say it was some early childhood trauma that triggered the whole thing. And yeah, I'm sure there's a little bit of that, but a lot of it was just on me. I learned how to self-medicate with sugary foods. I also learned that watching movies and playing video games gave me these great, now I can talk about it, it's dopamine hits.
Yep.
And I became very addicted to that lifestyle. Sugar makes me feel good right now. Video games, I feel good right now. Watching movies makes me feel good right now. So, at early age of 9, and that became my lifestyle, you can imagine that's not the healthiest of choices for a kid that's growing.
No.
And the weight just compounded bit by bit, month by month, year by year, to the point where, just before I turned 15, I remember a visit to the doctor's office with my mom, and Dr. Quinn, he's like, Benny, I want to talk to you for a minute. And she pulled my mom out of his office, right? And this is so funny, right? Because I'm like, dude, you're like 3 feet away. You didn't even close the door. Like, I can hear you guys talking about me, right? And I'm like, but I overhear him say, Benny, your son died. He's morbidly obese. And at this time, at 14 years old, I'm like, morbidly and obese. I don't know what either of those mean. I'm like, but it doesn't sound good, right? And
either way.
And either way, I mean, the bottom line is when my mom was trying to explain to me, and he was trying to talk about some of the, like all of a sudden my asthma became really bad,
Oh, wow.
I had joint issues, but also I was my mental health was in a really bad place.
I was going to say, yeah.
So all the, stereotypical things that are associated when we get to that kind of a place of unhealth.
Yeah.
I was living it. That was my life. That was my normal.
Yeah.
And which is also really hard because when we become normal, like when the actual lifestyle that we're living, that's creating a lot of pain for us, discomfort, sadness, depression, anxiety. But when that's become the normal for us, where it's like what we know that experience more than whatever it was like feeling healthy, it's hard to ever see anything changing. And I was at that place. I was like, I don't see myself getting healthy. I don't believe I can. I have very low self-esteem at this point. And, every time anybody wanted to help me, and I think people will relate to this, every time someone was trying to help me, like even my parents were like, oh, well, why don't we get you a personal trainer? Why don't we get you a gym membership or this, that, or the other, right? And every time they said that, I'm like, you just don't think I'm good enough. You think I'm fat, like that's what I was thinking. That's what I was feeling. And to be fair, I get that because I wasn't ready to help myself. So anytime someone tried to help me, it just told me that they wanted me to change because I wasn't good enough as I was.
Yeah.
So it's, it was a valuable life lesson at that time. I was getting this like really an adult education around psychology as I was observing myself in the shitty situation I was finding myself. And it was the weirdest thing. And I know every time I tell this, I still think about it and I'm like, man, did I really do that? And I'm like, well, I did, and there was a triggering moment where I just made a decision one day while I was at my dad's place. We see him every other weekend, my brother and I, and I remember coming out of the bathroom and being like, Dad, I want to get healthy. And it was only because I had just locked eyes with myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I just come out of the shower and I'm like doing the body scan and I burst into tears, like uncontrollable sobbing. It was like this release of tension, of guilt, of shame. And it was just like, literally the tears are washing all that away.
Yeah.
And I came out feeling, it was rather cathartic, releasing all that tension and pressure, of course, but I came out feeling ready to take some action. And I said to my dad, like, Dad, I want to get healthy. I don't want to be like this anymore. And there must have been something that I did, or he could just see that it was like, okay, he wants to do this. And he was like, I got to capitalize on this right now. And so I commend my dad, and I remember this moment because him and my mom were both agreeing to take me to go buy a mountain bike that day. I was like, I was just like, I want to do something that's completely private. Nobody can see me. So my bigger self that looked very big on that bike, I was like, I want to be able to go. And we lived out in the boonies in Ontario, so rural part of Ontario, outside of Toronto, and like country, like it was mainly apple farms, right? Like, and so there was lots of places to ride a bike and very private and secluded. So I was like, I'm going to go sweat this off by myself, and I'm just going to do what I can every day. And I went and educated myself on nutrition and on fitness. By the time I was 15, I started to develop a bit new of a routine. By the time I hit 16, I was now in flow. I was doing things regularly. I was starting to see some positive results. I was losing a bit of weight. I was putting on some lean muscle, but also at the same time, I was gaining a little bit extra confidence in myself. Belief. I actually believed that, wow, I wanted to make some changes. I started doing some things very different than I was doing for 5 years. And I'm seeing my body and my mind change as a result. And so, at 15, 16 years old, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, change isn't only possible. I can be the proactive or the protagonist of change. I can be the one that causes change, not me feel like I'm a victim of change.
Exactly.
And that was it, man. That's what got me started. And by 17, like literally 20 months later, I released all that weight. I put on some lean mass. I'd also kick-started puberty a bit more because I had a late puberty because of my lifestyle choices at that time. I had very low testosterone, if any. And that's fair. I mean, that's the lifestyle. I mean, any men that are in an obese state, any people in an obese state, their hormones are challenged in a really big way.
Yes.
Maybe we'll go there in our conversation later, but it's at that time, I wasn't doing myself any favors. And so as soon as I started making these lifestyle changes, testosterone started to increase, puberty started up, which also helped me.
Yes.
And so I do like to let people know that, I'm someone that can put weight on really easily. I am. I'm an ectomorph. Like, I want to put mass on. I can put mass on like this.
Yeah.
I eat, I train, I grow. But it goes the other direction too. Okay. But I got to a point where I was on autopilot. It was just lifestyle. It was just lifestyle. It was just like, I wasn't even thinking about what I was doing. I was getting up and that's just what I did. This is my life. And at that moment, and this is the craziest thing, I remember this one day, a friend of my mom's came to the house. I'm like, hey, it's Betty Ann here. And I'm just in the kitchen doing something. I don't even know what I was doing at the time, but it was like right after school and I'm mucking around the kitchen and they come to the door and I'm knocking on the screen door. I'm like, hey, is Betty Ann here? And I'm like, oh yeah, my mom's out in the back in the garden. She's doing some gardening. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And like, I'm waiting for them to leave, right, to go see my mom. And they're like, well, actually, before we see your mom, can we talk to you? And her husband wasn't there. He was down on the ground, but she came in and started talking to me. And she's like, Dai, we've seen this change that you've gone through these last couple of years. And I'm wondering, we want to get a little healthier. Can you help us? And I was like,
light bulb.
Me? I was like, you want me to help you? Like, me? Like, this is you gotta realize at this time of my life, I didn't feel like I had any value to offer.
Wow.
Right. And for anybody that understands how to rewire the brain to be more positive, one of the best solutions or strategies is contribution.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving to others. It's like right on par with that feeling of gratitude we get when we do things that are just, wow, I feel so grateful I had that opportunity, right? Well, this is that self-gratitude that we can earn by helping others. And it got me hooked, man. It was like once in, I was like, I'm hooked. I want to do more of this. I was like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life in some capacity. And that's what set things in motion for me. But, that was my origin story. I came morbidly obese kid and, made some subtle changes, and I kept repeating the changes day after day after, and just trusting that the process, if I was diligent enough, and I'm not saying strict, okay? That's not realistic, nor is it sustainable, right?
No.
But I knew if I was just consistent enough, that if I was doing the right things frequently enough, that it was going to produce better results than I was getting without doing those things.
100%.
That was it, and it's, I know I make it sound overly simplistic, but to be honest, it is.
It is. 100% it is. Because the thing is, and I totally resonate with that as well, is that it's almost like when you reach that homeostasis, it's almost like that's that set point that you can basically set for your life. And as soon as you realize exactly where you're lacking, that's where you're like, wait a minute, what do I do then? I should probably lower my calories by 1,000 calories. Should probably get rid of sugar. Should probably do a couple things where it's like, maybe those fast digesting carbohydrates. But then again, what is a carbohydrate?
Exactly, right? Like most of us aren't even aware of like what are macros? What are the building blocks that make our food that we put in our mouth every day, multiple times a day for our entire life?
Exactly. But
that's
it's one
why
of
I
those
get pissed
things.
off at the school system. I'll be honest with you. I get really upset at the school systems, and I won't go down that educational rabbit hole right now. But as a father of 2 teenage girls that have been through the system in different capacities, there's things that I think we're lacking.
Well, it's kind of like their whole hot lunch system where I'm like, dude, you want to give my kid a Powerade and Little Caesars? I'm like, I'm not really happy with that. I mean, most parents are just like,
McDonald's, the Happy Meal
dude.
days.
Man, that's
what
even
the hell?
worse.
What is that? Like, they're like, no, all the food groups are represented. I'm like, what food groups are these? I'm like, I don't understand that. I don't recognize these as food groups. And I don't know. It's weird, man.
Well, obesogens, xenoestrogens, and it's kind of like the further down that rabbit hole you kind of go. And it's funny that you mentioned testosterone levels. Right. Testosterone levels right now are at an all-time high. Sperm motility, same deal. We're seeing a whole bunch of different things that are affecting young boys and young girls, in their early development. And that's kind of, setting them up to fail for life. Because the way I see it, it's like, hey, you know what? If you're going to have all these chemical imbalances or these hormonal imbalances inside of your body, what's that going to do long term? Right. And one of the questions I have for you now, because you're the guy that has to step in and help people. What do you do? What is your basic protocol when they're like, hey, Dai, I need some help, man? What is the first thing that I should do?
But that's a great question. All right. It's a great question. I know there's lots of different strategies or concepts that we could, honestly start talking about. And they're probably all in their own right awesome and great strategies. Because I always say it's whatever you do and do consistently, it's going to work for you. Like that's usually the challenge, is just finding something that people can be consistent enough with, that to the point that it eventually becomes a habit. And then eventually becomes a ritual.
Yes.
There's a difference. Like ritual, we don't think about. It's like people that are devout, like any sort of religion, they don't think about prayer, right? It's just, they do it every day, like it's
second nature.
It is. It's just like, it's just there. It's part of the life. It's like breathing. And being healthy, I feel we can have that same sort of connection with our own personal lives and our bodies and our minds, and really have that self-awareness.
Yes.
But it takes time.
Yes.
And so the way I like to invite people to get started is, if there's, and, for the most part, there's always people that will put up their hand and say, well, who would like to lose a little weight, like who feels that they're carrying a little bit of extra too much body fat right now. people are going to put up their hands most of the time. Like, and if that's the goal, I'm like, well, how much movement do you get in a day? Like, really, I invite people, go buy an activity tracker. I mean, go to Costco, they're freaking like $50. Like, they're not very much. Like, you can get them. They're so inexpensive now. But even most smartphones now already have the capability built into it. So start tracking your movement patterns. How much do you move in a day? And if right now your average steps per day is like 2,000 or less, there's the first window of opportunity that we can open up. Literally, let's try to get you to 5,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Let's look at your water intake. How much water do you drink in a day? Oh, I drink X amount of coffees. I do some sodas. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't count as water. Just water. How much water are you drinking? Oh gosh, I maybe a couple glasses. Holy smokes. Okay, we're going to change that to at least 2.5, 3 liters. All right.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to start drinking per day. Whoa, that's a lot. And I get that. And people say, whoa. I'm like, whoa. You know what your body is made of? You know what it is? Like what it is. Like, I mean, you go and you get cremated. You know how much of your body fits in a little tiny box, right? Like, it's because all the fluids evaporate. It's all gone. You're all water, man. Like, and so I'm like, just trust me. Just trust me. Just start doing that. And then thirdly, I'm like, I want you to start tracking your sleep as well. Like those things, the hydration, that's tied to fuel and just giving us the energy, but also making sure the body's functioning the way it's meant to be functioning. It's like a car. Yes. Take the oil out of the car, it all gets seized. Take the water out of our bodies, trust me, things will seize. Okay? Things are not working well. Your metabolism alone will be slowed as much as 50 to 75 calories a day if you're not properly hydrated. Compound that over a year, we're talking about 6 to 7 or 8 pounds of extra weight gain that could have been averted if you just drinking enough water. Like, simple, right? Sleep. God, your sleep sucks. Well, it's probably because you eat sugar and you have a caffeinated drink in the evening before you go to bed. I mean, like, it's stimulants. You're drinking stimulants before you're trying to rest. Like, let's change that pattern, right? And so but you have to track. You have to know where you're at. You have to set the foundation. Where's my foundation set right now? Well, I don't like that. I feel like I'm below ground. Fair enough.
That's
bring
okay.
that up a little bit. Ground zero, and that's okay. But you need to have a starting point. So steps, how much movement in a day, how much hydration do you have? Is the body at least optimized so the functioning the way it's meant to be functioning? Yeah. And then lastly, how's your recovery? How are you managing your stress, especially your cortisol levels?
Boom, stress.
And that's chronic stress. It's the number one killer. People say, no, it's this cancer or that. I'm like, no, it's chronic stress. It's always chronic stress. At the end of the day, this is the stress. It's not good stress. Right? This is not like the stress. I mean, there's good stress and there's bad stress. It's like if I was going to Hawaii tomorrow and I was like, man, gosh, I haven't packed yet and the flight's at 6 a.m. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. That's good stress. Okay. Because I know I'm going to be going to Hawaii.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. I'm like, okay, I can handle this stress before I go to Hawaii tomorrow. But there's the other chronic stress, which is just life beats us down and we're not doing anything to offset that chronic state of being in fight or flight. And as a result, we build up a lot of cortisol, which also leads to more adipose tissue, more fat being deposited on our body, and our body doesn't regulate it, and other hormones get off regulated. It's just like a whole cascading of negative effects that happen.
100%.
And a lot of that can be averted if you just get quality sleep. It's wild, right? It's so simple. So simple. Yet people like to make it really complicated. I'm like, no. This is it. Just focus on these 3 things first. Try that and be consistent for 4 weeks and tell me things haven't improved,
100%. But that's kind of one of the most underrated things. Like, I remember listening to Sean Stevenson. He talks about, I think he wrote a book called Sleep Better, if I'm not mistaken. And he was talking about sleep hygiene and how, like, all the different things that are tied into sleep, whether you want long, make sure your telomeres are nice and long, you want to live longer, longevity, stress, like all that stuff is tied into sleep. And for anybody that wants to put on muscle, it's almost like, well, how often are you sleeping? It's like, 5 hours a day. Like, I had one guy who wanted to put on muscle. I'm like, and how often do you sleep? He's like, well, I sleep for 3 hours here, then 4 hours there. I'm like, have you ever heard of a circadian rhythm, my brother? Because what you're doing is going against it completely. And right. But it's kind of like those basic things where they seem basic, but we overlook them. And I mean, even for myself, I set a timer to remind myself when I should go to sleep, because it's easy for you to just be, I'll keep working on something else as you're looking at this laptop, typing in some more, and I know that completely disrupts my sleep cycle as well. But what are the things that you recommend for somebody that's, like, okay, I'm trying to get better at sleeping, Dai. What do I do?
Yeah, well, I think what you said earlier was this sort of the sleep hygiene idea is like it's creating a ritual around sleep. Like, one thing we like to do is try to eliminate any screen time an hour before bed. Just as an example, it's simple, but it's hard. Like, it's a simple concept. I notice I said simple, not easy.
No,
because you're right. We're conditioned. Like, I mean, it's usually the first thing that we look at in the morning and the last thing we look at night, right, is our phone. And this has been conditioned into us, and it's also just another reason why chronic stress is what it is today. We've never dealt with an epidemic like this before in any other history of humankind, and my belief, and a lot of it's self-imposed, right? Like, so that would be one thing. But also looking at our diets before bed. Like, will often eat almost all the way up right to bed.
Really?
But when I'm eating, it's not high in sugar. It's usually something that nourishes me, but it's also, I know it's going to help me with my sleep. And as an example, I might do a mini smoothie. But I'll limit the amount of fruit to be more vegetable based, right? Kind of a smoothie. So it's slower burning carbs as well. But I find it sustains me through the night. And I feel better when I wake up. I have a more restful sleep when I have a little bit of food in me. Now it's not always. Sometimes I do intermittent fasting, and that's okay too. But I do that in phases. I don't do it long term, like anything. It's really interesting how we can get really dogmatic about some of these protocols. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
I've met people
this way.
Like, I've met vegan Nazis, I've met carnivore Nazis, I've met Nazis on all sides of the spectrum, where I'm like, why can't we just meet in the middle? I'm like Rodney King out here, like, come on, guys.
No, but that's well said.
Yeah, the thing is, it's kind of like what you bring up, and I kind of had a similar approach too, where I love intermittent fasting. When I first, came up on it, I was all like, dude, this is the way. And then 4 months later I started to plateau. I'm like, what's going on? I gotta do more. And then it's like you double down. But now I kind of take more of the approach that I'm like, it's something you can implement, but at the same time you can maybe not do it for a while, and maybe you could try keto for a while, and you don't have to be dogmatic in your approach. If you want to be vegan, go for it. But I'm gonna send you to somebody who specializes in that, because the supplementation, all that involved, is not my forte, right?
That's great.
And the thing is, if it works for you, then why not, right? And that's the thing where I'm like, I'm not going to set up any solid lines as far as diet, nutrition goes. I'm like, no, nightshades are still good to eat. Like,
oh my gosh, the paleo people. I remember when I was first into paleo, and that must have been 12, 13 years ago, and I was all over. But it was also because at the time I was still competing in CrossFit and everything else too, right? So it was just like, it was part of, we talk dogma. It was like dogma already, right? It's like, this is a religion. Oh man, it was like, really, in reflecting on it, and it's like I was actually just having a conversation before we connected today with a Mad Lab group. I don't know if you're familiar with Mad Lab School of Fitness, and
I think so. That's the one downtown, right?
Yeah, they're Second and Clark. Clark. So it's actually right on the border of East and West Van there, East Vancouver and Vancouver. And Patty there, gosh, she's been running that because it was CrossFit Vancouver, and then it became Mad Lab. Fitness, and because they were one of the first people to de-affiliate. Now this has been a trend in the CrossFit community, quite heavily trending for the last 3 years. Like, people are not renewing their CrossFit affiliation, and because they're realizing you're paying a lot of money for just a name. There wasn't a lot else you were getting as an affiliate, from a support standpoint. So unlike a franchise, you buy a franchise, they give you everything, right? It's like turnkey. It's like,
exactly.
There you go.
It's more than just the box. Yeah,
that's right. Where CrossFit, you were buying the name, but hey, in its heyday, the name brought people in the door. So to be fair, was it worth the money? Yes, it was. But is it worth the money now? Not so much.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, and that's okay, because our industry is really young. And so case in point, what we're talking about here too, if you think about nutritionary sciences, right? Just the science of nutrition, it's only been around about 100 years. Right?
Yeah.
And even then, the way we understand nutrition now, really what we know now has only been come to the forefront in the last 20 years.
100%.
And even then, it's still being challenged. I was
yes.
I got these two covers of Time magazine. One's from just over 30 years ago, and it vilifies fat. It talks about fat is evil, and this is during the whole low fat, no fat of the late 80s and then the 90s. Even into the early 2000s, we were still doing it.
Yep.
Then right around the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, 2010, all of a sudden there was all this resurgence about how fat it might be the cure, like that's
Coconut oil,
yes,
MCT
coconut oil,
oil,
even butter, right?
butter.
Because there's this other Time magazine from like 2012 that talks about butter being like this miracle solution. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, it's Time magazine. You've got a cover 30 years ago that said, fat, don't eat it. It's bad. It's going to kill you. And then you've got it saying it might save you. It's a lifesaver. Like, this is important for vitality. And I'm like, this is a trusted media resource.
Yeah.
No wonder people have no clue what to do, right?
No.
And no trust. Like, honestly, they got to be skeptical, because it's like, this guy told me this person told me that. Like, what the hell? Like,
and that's kind of the thing where I agree with you, because I feel like I don't know who the they is, but it's kind of like, if I look at the food pyramid, I remember being a kid and looking at it, I'm like, that's a crap load of carbs, and it's all fast digesting carbohydrates. By the way, it's sponsored by Wonder Bread,
Yeah, that's right.
and I always kind of found it strange, where I'm like, yo, when I started like actually watching my diet and learning more about nutrition, I'm like, I shouldn't be eating these fast digesting carbohydrates. And at that time, there was a diet that came out, and it was if it fits your macros and carb cycling, right? And I did carb cycling because it worked like a charm, and I still do. Because it's kind of like, it's still effective. And, you do it for a certain amount of time, you get to the body fat that you want to be at, and you kind of just linger there for the summer. And then, if I put on a couple of pounds in the winter, I know how to get it off. Right. And that's kind of the way I go about it. But it seems like you said, man, like at one point, everybody that I know now that's jumping onto a fad diet, they're all keto. Right. And I'm like, 10 years ago, keto? Oh, you're going to die from all that fat that's going to coagulate your heart, and you're going to be destroyed, Yep. And looking into the origins of it, I'm like, this was made back in like the early 1900s for kids with epilepsy.
That's right.
And it's like, now it's like a fashionable thing that you take with your MCT oils and all that. And I'm just like, where are we going next?
It's wild, right? Like, I mean, I had a conversation. I went to the Vancouver Wellness Show on Sunday, and I had this conversation with this gentleman, Jerry Kroll, and he's from a company called Body Comp. But they also have this really cool app called Jevity. So Body Comp is like, they have these facilities all over the Vancouver Lower Mainland where they have DEXA scans, and they make it really accessible to go and do a full body comp. It's awesome. It's like a great service. I get 2 done a year, right? Like, just every 6 months, I just do a DEXA scan because I want to know, where am I at?
Exactly.
And it's good. It's good. It's good to know where you're at, and also it's nice because I'm like, okay, did I improve over the last 6 months, or did I regress? And it's nice to just know where I'm at with myself, and those data points. And I was having this conversation. He was like, the next big frontier is going to be curing death. You know what I mean? Like, it really is. It's the longevity conversation, as you hinted to earlier, talking about telomeres.
Right?
Dr. David Sinclair has got a great book where he talks just about longevity, right? But he says, there's, as much as we've done really well at helping us extend our lives, like an extra 10, 20 years on the back end of life. Mm-hmm. But what we haven't been really good at is helping people stay vital, like having the vitality to live a great life for those last 20 years, which science is great at keeping us going, no matter how sick we are, because we have a sick, it's not a healthcare system, we have a sick care. Right?
Yes, I agree with you.
So, it's really interesting, but that's really where the next big, I think, biggest, most significant breakthroughs in what we're talking about is going to happen in the state, in the field of longevity.
100%.
But longevity 100%. With vitality,
Yeah, because it was funny. I was talking to, not funny. It makes perfect sense, because I was talking to a doctor, and he was telling me about like how TRT, he would use it with, like, he would do plastic surgeries on females. And he's like, listen, man, TRT gets vilified because you think bodybuilder, you think MMA, you think, juiced up, the dude at the gym that's got dragon tattoos all over his body. He's just like, Argh. He's like, that's not the way that we actually use it, from a medical standpoint. He's like, use it like in a micro dosing effect, and you can see huge changes, right? So like, let's say you take an 80-year-old patient, broke his hip, you give him TRT in the appropriate amounts, he can recover in half the time, right? That's and going back to your point about vitality, I mean, you combine that with, PRP shots, stem cell research, all that kind of stuff. I want to be vital when I turn 90. And I think a lot of us are now kind of, pushing that needle up a little bit higher. Like, hey, I don't want to be, in a wheelchair. Like, I can't really control myself. And that's where the vitality piece comes in. So longevity wise, man, I think, yeah, your buddy's definitely onto something there. I think that makes perfect sense.
It's cool though, right? Like, I mean, we're going that direction, and I think that's the next big frontier, especially with all these like billionaires that are, locking onto the whole space travel side of things, which I think is amazing. But the only way we're going to be able to cover the travel is we're going to have to figure out the longevity piece. We're going to have to figure out how to slow death to cover the long distances over time. And
100%.
And so I know that there's going to be a lot of there already is a lot of research going into this field, and I think it's only become more and more like general awareness will increase more and more, and which is exciting because it's, man, I mean, it is exciting, right? To think that, the average life expectancy could easily go to 120 to 150 in our lifetime.
I hope so.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I don't want to live between the ages of 100 to 150 if I'm like wheelchair bound 100%. And I need somebody to wipe my ass,
No.
I'm sorry. And I'm not doing this to offend people, but I look at my grandparents, right? And it just, for them, like the earliest signs that decrepitude is setting in, and this is just a natural process. If you're not looking after yourself, doing no resistance type training, very little movement, very poor nutrition choices, of course, your body's going to slowly decay.
Yes.
But you lose muscle mass and you lose bone density. When you lose those two things, getting those two things back, holy smokes, it's 10 times harder to get it back than it was to lose it.
Yep.
So why lose it to begin with?
No.
Create the lifestyle now, so you don't have to think about that. It's just general maintenance to stay optimal and stay in your best, healthiest self. And so you can slow the aging process naturally without the help of science, right?
Yeah.
And then when science kicks in, it's just the bonus. Like, you've already
100%.
got the good habits, right? And so that's where I see, there's some people that are like super excited. Give me a pill, I'm in. And I'm like, oh man, you're
wrong thing.
Back of the line. I'm sorry. Like, no. No, it's.
I agree with you, because it's kind of like, from the biohacking standpoint, a lot of people are kind of, really learning more and getting on that path. And I think it only makes sense. And at this time, we're noticing that kind of combination of fitness and that, well, fitness with the mind, with nutrition and all that kind of that holistic approach that didn't exist. I mean, I would hear it years ago and people would be like, yeah, it's the holistic approach. But it's like, what are you doing for your mind? It's like, well, I watch TV at the end of the day, or I read a book. But I'm like, people are digging in deeper now. And I think that's kind of what's making the difference and really upping the ante. One question I had for you, because now, we were talking about adaptation early on. Yeah. And I know that your approach, your mental approach of things is very unique. And I wanted to go into, what is it that sets you apart? What is it that you do, like, as far as your own ritual goes and your kind of, I guess, mindset? Like, what is your mindful approach to doing things?
Well, great question. Well, Conrad, for me, it's mental health first, right? I'm at a pace in my life now. Again, being 45, I've had a few laps around the sun, right? And on these laps around the sun, I've learned a couple things. More so, I've just made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned from those mistakes. Okay, so over time, we just get more experience because we make more mistakes, and I've definitely put myself in a position to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's as we all know, to grow and to evolve, we have to. You got to be making mistakes, because it just means you're actually doing stuff. And exactly. The mental health piece, though, is critical. I had a new appreciation for this and prioritizing that most recently, starting last summer, in June of 2021. I had just come off of 6 months of really doing very little. Like, my lifestyle was not in a very good place because mentally I wasn't in a very good place, because I had a hernia operation at the beginning of the year. And it was a redo of a past, like, epigastric hernia. So this is a hernia that's sort of in the middle of the abdominal region, right? Like right below the xiphoid process, right in the middle of the top ad, right? I had this little micro tear, and then I tore it again, the exact same place. And that was really deflating, because all of a sudden then we moved back to Canada, and then we got on the wait list to get the surgery, and then finally had it. And the doctor's like, if you come back with the same injury again, I'm going to put a mesh in you. And because I was like very against having a mesh. So
you didn't get the mesh?
Okay. Didn't get the mesh. But I was also strong enough and healthy enough that she agreed, no mesh. And And even the second time, even though I tore it again, I was like, no mesh. She's like, you come back a third time, you get in the mesh. And so I said, okay. So because of this, I really wanted to ensure that I prioritized recovery and healing.
Yeah.
So I gave myself the full 12 weeks. But I also sort of took a step back. At the same time, I was, preparing for my first TedX talk, and I had some other things going on in my business and family life. And so, it's life. It's dynamic. There's always lots of different stuff happening. And should be one of the best people to be aware of that, because I talk about this all the time. And yet I found myself sliding backwards in my own commitments, my own rituals.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a place eventually towards the end of June that I had this 6 months let myself go. I got up to about 20% body fat, which my healthy, I walk around now at around 10, 11%.
Yeah.
That's sort of my,
oh, you're shredded.
typical,
I saw you.
That's my sort of everyday thing now, right? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
my lifestyle is such that it's super simple for me to maintain that. Like, I don't have to change anything. I don't train crazy amounts. Like, maybe I work out 3 hours a week kind of thing, not a huge amount, but I'm very efficient with my 3 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do in 3 hours what most people probably do the same amount of volume in 5 hours, right? Like, so I'm very efficient.
Yeah.
Because I'm all about like in and out. Like, I want to get her done and get out so I can enjoy the rest of my life. And it's sort of like taking a car in for an oil change. We just want to get in there, change my oil so I can get going and live life. That's how I look at going for a workout sometimes. Like, it's fun. I enjoy it. But sometimes it's just, I got to do this because I know how good it makes me feel.
Exactly.
Right. So long and short, I was like, I got to get back to this. And I drew that line in the sand. I said, okay, what would it look like? Because I'm at 44 at this time, last summer. And my 45th birthday was less than 6 months away. I'm like, what would it be like to end, 2021, the healthiest I've ever been in my life? Now, notice I said healthiest, not fittest.
Yeah.
And so when I said healthiest, I was like, what does health mean again to me? And so I went back to some of my core values. And a lot of that has to do with mindset and my relationship to the things in my life, the people in my life, the passion and the aspirations and purpose in my life. So getting reconnected with all those things was very important for me. So as much as I put some processes in place to start to pay attention, it's really just exercises to gain clarity. Because when we have clarity, we get confident. When we have confidence, we can take action.
Yeah.
Because the quickest way to kill procrastination is go and get confident.
Yes.
Yes. And because it's hard to procrastinate if you're confident that you're doing the right things for the right reasons and it's going to produce the right results.
100%.
So here I was thinking, okay, I'm going to redo things how I normally would do it. Because normally I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to diet, go back to the gym, work out like crazy. And I'm like, well, I do that every single time I want to get to this place where I let myself go and I come back. I'm like, this sucks. I'm just like everybody else. And when I say I'm not trying to put this down, but I mean, I've been in this industry working professionally for almost 30 years. Like, you think I know better by now. And so I found myself talking to myself this way. I'm like, Dai, what are you doing? Like, dude, give your head a shake and just have a hard reset and start again.
Yep.
But this time, let's do it differently. And I said, what would it look like to prioritize mental health first?
Interesting.
So I made that the priority and then everything else secondary. And I started with the first month, all I did was walk. Every day I was going out and I was walking about 10 to 15,000 steps a day. That's what I was doing. And that's, for people that want to know, that's about an hour and a half at a brisk pace, upwards of, that 12 to 15,000, you can do it in about 90 to 120 minutes, but it's a fairly quick walk, right? And I was a faster paced walk doing that, but I listened to an audiobook or a TED talk, something inspiring while I was doing it. So I'm cascading a couple habits. One, to feed my mind with positive messages, because you can't help but absorb that when you're walking, okay? Or you're exercising, listen to something positive. I know everybody likes to listen to music, put on an audiobook. It might not be as motivating, but listen to something positive and you'll be surprised how much of that information you retain while you're training.
Exactly. Yep.
It's wild, right? Like, you learn, it's like learning on steroids, the steroids, but exercise is the steroid, right? And it helps us absorb this information and stimulates us. So I started with that. And then I started to layer in things after a few weeks, and then in the second month, I started adding a few more things. And these are just habits of making sure I'm getting my water. Am I getting my daily movement in? Okay, let's start working on mobility, because I haven't done much mobility. I've been sitting at a desk a lot. I wasn't working at my, even though I had standing desk, I wasn't standing, I was still sitting. So I had a reset, man. I just looked at little things that I'm already doing in my day. What if I just did those things that I was going to do anyways, but just did them a little bit differently?
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I created this 60-day protocol. I ended up calling it Merge 60. I did it for myself 3 times through. So it was a 60-day protocol, and I did it 3 times through for the last 6 months of last year. I ended the year at my fittest and healthiest self ever, so mentally healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, as well as spiritually a lot healthier. Like I looked at all those areas, and also financial health. I know it's a very important part that a lot of us skip over.
Yeah.
But also I looked at my finances. I looked at, my wife and I, we got really clear on budgets again. We reset on the financial health, and we talked about dreams and aspirations and certain things that we wanted to do and we wanted for our kids. So we really reset everything.
Wow.
And then just every 60 days I repeat and change, and ever so slightly, but do the same sort of protocol. Merge 60 was just an acronym. Merge, it's basically move every day, every way. E is all about eating, eat to fuel, right? R is more about recovery, so recovering well.
Mm-hmm.
G and E are sort of similar, because I'm still playing with those words. Like, I don't think I've got the right ones, because I've had a couple people, I've been beta testing it now.
With other people, you're like, which one sounds better, man?
Got a couple groups going through it right now. But the whole idea is this idea of merging. Think about when you're driving in a car. You get stuck. Like, I don't know if you've ever driven in LA. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, I didn't like that place.
It's crazy. I mean, there's sections where it's like literally 7 lanes. You get 7 lanes to cross.
That's ridiculous. I mean, the most we got here is like 4. So
yeah, that's right. But even if you go to like Toronto, I mean, there's sections that there's 5 lanes on each side, right? Like it's a massive, the 401 at certain places. But so here's the thing: like when you're in traffic and you're going a direction, trying to get to a destination, stop and go is the least efficient way to get there. And 100%. It's frustrating, and it sucks, right? It sucks, especially if you have to backtrack to get to where you want to go. Very inefficient. So my whole concept is like, do the things that allow you to stay in flow. Yeah. Stay moving forward. And this is this whole idea. If you learn how to merge really effectively, you're always moving forward.
Yes.
And so it's 60-day periods of merging these markers of your health and your well-being. And so yeah, man, that's it. There'll be lots more coming out on this, as I'm officially launching it in about another month's time. And it's sort of just a culmination of everything that I've learned up to now. And I it's funny, right? Like I'm training less than I've ever trained, but I'm getting better results than I've ever had. And in all areas of life. And I know people are probably listening, it's like, you're so full of it. And I'm like, I wish I was. I wish I could say, yeah, this is all smoke and mirrors, but I'm like, no, it's simple.
No, I don't think so. Well, that's because you nailed it on the head. And it's kind of the way I kind of see it is like, you got to have all bases covered if you really want to reach optimal health. I, for myself, I'm in the same boat, man, where it's just like constantly, you got to look at what you can better, right? Because if you're not, I think complacency plays big into it as to why so many of us are stressed all the time, right? It's like, I just go back, I do the same norm, and then at the end of the day, I'm pissed off and I go eat a pizza. and like, I say that lightly, but you compound that by 10 years. And then buddy comes to you and he's 60 pounds overweight. He's grumpy. He's upset. He's stressed out. He's just like, I'm barely hanging on before, you do some horrible, right? And it's kind of the way that you go about it makes perfect sense, because I can kind of, like I said before, just reset that set point. Like, all right, let's bring it down to where we need to, but let's start with the little things first. Yeah. And I mean, starting off with walking, man, probably one of the most refreshing things you can do.
Yeah. We're fortunate too. I mean, we live in a beautiful city where walking is awesome. Sure. Yeah. I mean, you got to learn how to walk in the rain and like it. But
Vancouver.
But to be fair, it's also like it was June, almost July. And man, you remember last summer. I mean, it was an awesome summer.
It was awesome. It was warm.
And I mean, there's very few places that are as beautiful as Vancouver during late spring and summer and early fall. We have almost like a 5-month period there where it is heaven on earth.
It is. It's very nice.
And I'm grateful. We're almost there now. It's like, I can see it. The cherry blossoms are on the trees. I'm like, it's coming. It's coming
right around the corner.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. But just walking simple. You put on a pair of shoes, you get out your door, and away you go. It's not challenging. It's super accessible and doesn't cost any money.
And if you got kids, it's the perfect way to get them out of the house too.
Heck yes.
I got 2 young boys, and it's almost like, go run after each other, go tackle each other, go outside. You're good to go now. But it is one of those things that I think is probably one of the most overlooked when it comes to fat loss. Like Mike Dolce, the guy that came up with the Dolce diet, he said that's the way he starts off his day every day. He's in the fastest state. He goes for a walk on like the Jersey Shore beach, and that's the way he goes about it. And I'm like, yeah, it's beautiful. And it's a great way to really get your mind, set right too.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. It's just it's a nice way to start the day, and usually mine's in the early morning as well. And that works best for me because I'd always like to catch, especially during the summer months. And this is interesting because I think there's a lot more. You talked about circadian rhythms, but it's also this idea of early morning sunshine and the power of that natural absorption of not only the vitamin D, but just those early morning rays have a very nurturing and more than just nurturing, it's actually got some healing qualities to it, and so I like those early morning walks, especially as the sun's coming up. And I have a favorite place in Yaletown down by David Lamb Park. I've shared it. It's out there. It's public, but I go and I sit down and you catch the rays as they're coming over. There's a beautiful bench where I would sit. And my intention is this year to start doing, like I've started the last couple months, I've been doing Tai Chi because I want to learn Tai Chi because it's meditation through motion, right? That's really, and so now rather than sitting on the bench, I want to be able to do my Tai Chi while the sun's coming up. That's my vision, right? So, anyways, more on that later.
100%, man. Because I'm in the same boat too, where I started to realize the power of meditation this year. Like it's something I always overlooked, and I was just like, man, and then all of a sudden you start doing it. You're like, all right, fine. There's some truth in this.
But isn't it cool though? Like I find it because I tend to attract a lot of men that are similar to me. And what I mean by that is I attract a lot of guys that are sort of late 30s to early 60s. Like I work with a lot of men in that category. I also work with women too, but a lot of men especially. I'm more skewed to men just based on just what I do. I obviously they're reaching out for support, and I love to help them. And what I've noticed is this idea of normal. Right. It's just like our new normal has to be redefined. Right. Like, and that shift from going from what we've accepted as our life and as, this is just how it is to versus where I would like it to be involves often a paradigm shift because sometimes beliefs need to be challenged.
100%.
This is where the life coaching elements come into play, as well as the neuro. I'm a neuro change practitioner, so it allows me to go in and just do more mental awareness type exercises with people to help them get really clear on what they want to rewire.
Where you want to go, and that's the thing about neuroplasticity. That's kind of where you come in, right? And that's where you make the changes.
Correct.
And I could imagine it's almost like, hey, you know what? You're a dude. All right, you want to come work with me? Let's start with where do you want to go first?
Yes. And it's amazing when you have direction, at least be pointed to know I'm going to go this way. I may not know where I'm going yet, but I know I'm going this direction.
Yeah.
And direction's great to start with. I mean, we all need a little bit of direction. But otherwise, once you've got some direction, now it's just a matter of taking the steps, pardon the pun, but yes, quite literally taking the steps, not only metaphorically, but literally. And once you do it, gosh, it's self-perpetuating because you can't help feeling good. And, one last thing, just to sort of close the loop on this conversation, it's also ask yourself, what are things that I would never regret? Like never, ever, ever regret. Because I'll tell you, as someone that's been in the fitness space for almost 30 years, I've never had a client reach out to me and say, Dai, that salad, with the big cedar plank salmon that you told me to have for dinner tonight, geez, I sure regret eating that. Like I've never had anybody say, I've never had someone say, hey, I know you keep encouraging me and you held me accountable to get to the gym today. Well, yeah, I really regret that I took the time for myself to go to the gym. Like I've never heard that. I have yet. They might say, I hate the workout you programmed for me. And I'm like, yeah. But I know you love it at the same time, but hey, I'll take it. I'll take that,
Exactly.
But I've never heard them say, I regret taking the time for myself, especially when it relates to things that are healthy and good for us. And we have to keep that in mind. So if you'll never regret doing that, why don't you do more of it? You know,
Yeah.
like it's cool. Where it's like, oh, I went out last night with the guys again, and I said I'd only have one beer, and then I had a pitcher, and
Yeah.
now I feel like crap, and my whole days feels like blah, blah, blah. I really regret going out last night and having all those drinks. Great. Do you think you're going to do that again next time it happens? Well, I don't know. And I'm like,
Maybe.
well,
Yeah.
show up and just have water. Do what I do. Get club soda with some lime.
Yeah.
You know, like who cares? Like I'd rather eat my calories than drink them anyway. So I'm the guy that I'm just going to order a second burger. Like, I don't care. Like,
yeah.
I'm going out. It's not like I can eat like that every night, but I'm like, that was a good burger. I'm going to have another one, you know, like,
yeah,
that's the extra calories I'm going to take in is with my food, right? Not in empty
not?
Calories.
Exactly.
And, so it's an education piece, right? A lot of it.
100%. Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And that's kind of what I find. That's the biggest thing when you're telling people. And when you're just giving them the lowdown on like how protein works and why you should be consuming maybe a little bit more and putting down the carbohydrates, you know, and it's not that I'm saying that, you know, you should never eat chips again. Like, however, you know, if like you just said right there, it's like one of the regrets that you'll never have is probably never eating another bag of chips. You know, like now that you put it like that, I'm like, bro, I don't think I will ever, you know, look at that. Oh, God, I just wish I had another bag of chips today. You know, like I don't think you
seriously will. But I'll tell you, and I'll be perfectly honest. And I, those that are listening to this, I realize we're talking from a place that's different, right? Like, I mean, you and I have more than drank the Kool-Aid. We live the Kool-Aid, right? We're now Kool-Aid peddlers. and I realize coming from that conviction can sometimes be intimidating and it's not as inviting. So I want to let people know I can empathize with how you're feeling and where you're at.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in those states of unhealth, and I'm talking like I was mentally depressed, dealing with anxiety, as well as being very unhealthy physically. And so, you know, you take all these ingredients. Yeah, it's not a pretty, you know, recipe. I mean, it's kind of ugly, and it makes us feel pretty gross.
Yes.
And I understand how getting the quick reprise from feeling gross is attractive, because I've done that. It's the instant gratification that we get from certain stimulus.
Yes.
Drinking, drugs, you know, watching a movie, you know, like, and I'm not saying this stuff's bad. Okay. Like, please no, like, but if it doesn't align with what you want for yourself in your life, and it's actually pulling backwards based on what you want, you have to ask yourself, why do I keep doing this?
Yes.
Because until you start challenging the motivations for those, or maybe the lack of motivation, you know, change is probably not going to happen.
No,
and
not at all.
We want instant gratification. I mean, gosh, we can order products on Prime, not only one click, but it's delivered next hour, right? Like, holy smokes, like we're conditioned to be able to get things immediately.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when it comes to making health changes, it's not like they change overnight. It doesn't happen that way. And even putting weight on, if people walked into McDonald's and ordered a Big Mac meal with all the extras, you know, it's like almost 2,000 calories, right? If you supersize everything and you get like the full beverage, I guess like 2,000 calories. I mean, it's like what most people, North Americans eating, you know, should be eating
for a day.
You know? And it's like one meal, right? And sometimes this is a meal between meals for people. I've had clients like that, right? And I'm not here to judge. I've been there. Okay, I've been that guy. So
I don't judge.
There's no judgment here. There's no criticism, no blame or shame or any of that stuff. It's just a situation. It's a fact. But if people walked in and they'd had that meal and they walked out and they looked at the scale, or all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I got to open up a belt buckle on my pants. You know, that instant feedback, you know, it would then switch our relationship with that habit.
100%.
Problem is, it's gradual. It happens over time. And you know, like I think about me from age 9 to 14, it's not like I put on that extra 80 to 100 pounds overnight. It took 5 years, man. Like 5 years of me consistently not doing anything as well as eating a certain way. And that's what happened. And so with that knowledge, we have to also come at the health side and realize it takes time to change things. But the cool thing is about health, you do get instant gratification from the feel good experience of making good choices.
That dopamine hit.
Yes, we do. We feel good. Not only did I maintain a commitment that I made to myself, that commitment by doing it made me feel good, made me feel fulfilled, made me feel like I actually love myself and I kept a promise to myself. But I also, on the back end, I actually feel really good. You know, like I feel less stressful. I don't feel as irritated or angry or anxious.
Yeah.
Like, not only that, I started to realize my sleep's better. Those little arguments or, comments that my wife and I would make, I'm not bickering as much. Like, it translates into every aspect of our lives. And it all starts by just making a commitment to making a choice and then following it up with an action, and then wash, rinse, repeat. And I'm trying to make it as simple as possible so this is accessible to everybody. And but I do realize it's hard to change. I get it, but everyone has that possibility and potential in them. So yeah, that's
boom. That was a beautiful way to cap off this episode.
Thanks, man.
Dai, man, you gotta tell us where we can find you, man, because I know there'll be lots of guys who are gonna be looking for coaching as well, or just want to learn more about that whole neurocoach side of things.
Sure.
So tell us more about, and your book too. Don't forget about that.
Thanks. Oh man, well you're awesome. I've been really enjoying our conversations, but I also just love how knowledgeable you are. Like, but also you're a product of the knowledge, which means your wisdom. Like your wisdom incarnate, right? But everybody is. I look at anybody that's amazing at what they do. They've taken general knowledge and they've learned how to apply it to produce very significant results.
Yeah.
That is wisdom. Wisdom is applied knowledge to create a certain result. And so I appreciate the wisdom bombs you've been dropping, but also the fact that tit for tat here, we've had just an amazing conversation. So thank you for not only capturing this, but having a platform to share this.
Hey, thank you for coming on, man.
I'm honored to be here, man. This has been great. And I can't wait till we have our next conversation.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I know we're going to have many. And I also can't wait till we meet up in person, man.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Come summertime. Yeah. You're down the street. So
I know, seriously. And anyway, so thank you for that. And my name, I know it's spelled really weird. Dai is a Welsh name for David. So it's D-A-I. Manuel, Portuguese last name, M-A-N-U-E-L. And I always joke with people, but Dai Manuel, I mean, it sounds very different. But as I tell everybody, don't worry about it. I'm Canadian. It's all good. It's all good. And, but all you got to do is, if you can type that into any social media platform, you're going to find me. And that's the only cool thing about having a unique name is every time I go to a social media platform, no one else has got it. So
like perfect.
Yeah. But if you want to have a conversation, anybody that's listening or watching this, Facebook, Instagram, as well as LinkedIn are my 3 platforms I'm most active on myself.
Gotcha.
So reach out to me on any of those. Let's have a conversation. But also, if you want information and just information to help you, and what I mean by help you is help you start producing the results that you want for yourself in your own life. My website's got about 1,800 articles on it now that I've written over 14 years that I've been blogging. So
wow,
it is like content overload. I know that people are like, man, I feel like I just drank from a fire hose. Yeah. I'm not going to apologize. I'm just like, it's a repository of just stuff that I've learned and things that I want to provide people to help them. So if you go to the website, enjoy. I felt like I was going to apologize. This is very Canadian of me. I'm sorry for how much time it's probably going to take out of your life, but it's good time. And you'll probably learn a thing or two that can help you. And I always say that's a great place to begin. And my book's called The Whole Life Fitness Manifesto. I know if you're in a bookstore, just type in my name and you'll see my book pop up. And it's just a book that gives you 28 days to reset the body, the mind, and the spirit in just 30 minutes a day. And so that's also available in a resource people can tap into. So thank you so much. Like this has been a pleasure and a lot of fun.
It was an absolute honor having you here. And believe me, I don't think anybody's ever going to regret this. So
boom. I love that. Good callback. That was awesome. Love it.
All right. On that note, Dai, I hope you have a wonderful day. It's beautiful. It's sunny out. So we got to make sure we get our steps in.
Hell yeah.
And for all you guys watching or all you guys listening out there, thank you for tuning in. And until the next episode.